So we actually have another option that's opened up to us with the latest version of Dimension for rendering this house in more detail. So Adobe Dimension doesn't start with the name Adobe, so you'll actually find it down here. And while that's opening up, we need to get this model ready for use in Dimension. We don't want to have the same format that we use for Blender that you may have seen, which is the DAE file. We're actually going to switch and use the OBJ file for this to work. I'm clicking on OBJ, and there are some options that seem to help a lot. Triangulate all faces helps, and you want to have those texture maps exported unless you just have all colors. And this needs to stay there because it actually switches which direction is up. So Y is going to become up. So far, model unit seems to be working. There may be a better one, but when we export, we want to make sure and put it somewhere other than our SketchUp folder because we're going to end up with a lot of additional files. So you can see I've made a folder for models for Blender and another one with models for Dimension. I've already done a lot of exporting. Notice there's a folder that has the actual textures in it along with an OBJ file. So changing date codes as you move along is really important. So I know that these will all start with 25. So I'm going to go ahead and export that and go to Dimension and say Create New. It has a lot of options on here. This is everything, things that you can put onto a stage and different materials that you can switch your colors and textures to, as well as different lighting setups. We're going to keep it simple and just import our 3D model by going to Models for Dimension and looking for today's date. So here's Painted Simple House. Don't rename this or the folder, or the things will not be connected. But when I open that up, the house is actually going to be rather large, so there probably is a different set of dimensions that will work. But I can just scroll out and you'll be able to see this house. Now I'm going to use Shift and my orbit button, my middle mouse wheel. To orbit, however, it's the right mouse button in Dimension. And so you can get a different angle, whatever you might want to do, and adjust it there. And let's just see what this looks like. If we go from Design over to Render, we'll be able to make some choices. Now, one of the nice things is it can make a multi-layered Photoshop file. We're just going to stick with PNG for right now. Quality medium will take a good while, about half an hour at 1080p. Let's make sure that we've got a file name here. One of the things we haven't done is File, Save As. And I'm going to be in Models for Dimension. I'm going to select this folder and do renaming, just so I can copy the name of it really easily and give this Dimension file the same name. So I'm going to save this Dimension file. By adding, let's say, DIM to the end. Otherwise, it tries to go in the folder. And now I'm going to change the name of the output. And so this is going to be a PNG, and I also like to put that this is medium. Now the size of this frame is something that we will want to make some changes to so that it's standard. But let me just hit render and I'll show you what that picture looks like as it's developing. And it just keeps going over and adding more and more and more detail. So to really show off this house, we want it to be much higher resolution so we can zoom in and take a look at details. But that is rendering SketchUp files in Dimension.